So it's Father's Day, and I think we should start this conversation with a Father's Day conversation. I believe that everyone loves their father. Now, I've been involved in the mythopoetic men's movement for decades, and I know there are a lot of men that claim they don't love their father. They hate their father. They're angry at their father. But the truth is that we all love our father, that when we have conflict about that, we cover up that love, that sense of love and connection with anger and upset, so that we don't have to deal with the issues that are unresolved in us. So I reject the idea that people live in a place of absolutely hating their father. They do what they have to do to make their lives work, as we all do. My story of my dad, this father's thing is really personal, so I got to get personal for a few minutes. My dad was a very gentle being. He was, in being so gentle and living with my mom, who wasn't that way, it kind of overwhelmed the sense of how the household went. He only hit me once, and he regretted it immediately. She hit me all the time and seemed to enjoy it. Oh, she'd be so mad at me if she heard me say that. But that's sort of the way it worked. So when it was my turn to be a father, I was first a stepfather, I was not really good at it because I really didn't know how. And I probably used more of my mother's tactics than I did my dad's. And so that was kind of a disaster. And then I had a son in the same family unit that I had a stepson, and I love that boy so much, but I really wasn't all that good at it, especially in a very dysfunctional relationship. So because of that high level of dysfunction, I don't have a relationship with my son now. He's in his 40s, and he pretty much follows the line that his mother set, that I was to be hated and kept away from. And it's sad. And there was many years of my life when I said that was the great tragedy of my life. But what actually happened is that when his mother and I were officially divorced, still in the courtroom, or in the building of the courthouse, after that was finalized, he sat me down. He was 8 years old. And he said, I can't do this with you. It makes my life too hard. And as hard as it was to hear that, I agreed that I wouldn't see him anymore. And what actually happened from that was that I started my spiritual awakening. I left there. It was Miami, Florida. And I went back to Houston, where I had lived. I closed up shop, sold my little business, and moved to California, and then as quickly as I could get a visa to Australia, where I met my first spiritual teacher and began that journey of figuring out who I was, which I would not have been able to do had I stayed there consistently and continuously fighting with his mother. So as hard as that was, what he did was he gave me permission to live the life I'd come to live. And I am forever grateful to him for that. And whatever happens beyond that is a bonus. But that's how that worked out. Now, I've had the blessing of having Barbara's son, Matthew, in my life. He didn't like me much when we first got together. That was my doing, too. First time we sat down for a meal in a restaurant, I pulled a piece of ice out of my water and I tossed it at him. And he looked at me, and he took one of his and tossed it at me, and I ducked, and it hit the woman at the next table. And it didn't get a whole lot better for a while from that. But we've kind of worked that out. In fact, some of the best working out we did around it has been since Barbara's stroke, so that there's a much deeper appreciation between us. And his two sons, they're my grandsons, to the point that one of them actually said to his mother's father one time, "You're not my real grandfather. Papa is." We got through that. But the dynamics of this can seem complicated, but truly they're not that complicated. And I want you to know that my perceptions are that the relationship that you have with a parent or with an intimate partner or with a business relationship or anything like that, social connections, all that stuff, have the same basic elements to them that should be considered. And the reason they do is that we're involved in them. Relationships are important, but I got to say, this idea of the illusion of a relationship is truly the way I see it. Because what is a relationship? Where is it? Can you point to it? Can you really describe it as a unified thing? You really can't. Because this thing between you and me, I have a relation. I relate to you, and you relate to me. Now, there could be influences between those two places, but they're not the same. They're not happening at the same time. They're on their own. They're really two things going on simultaneously with some influence, but not dependent on one another. I've seen relationships where one person had one perception of the whole thing and another person had a completely different idea of what was going on. How do we call that a relationship and have it be a unified thing? I don't see it. I don't understand it. To me, that doesn't make any sense. What is true is that we must relate to others. We're hardwired for that. We have to do that. We don't go through this life on our own. And probably the easiest example I can give you about that speaks it so clearly comes from a movie from a couple of decades ago. It's called Castaway. This was an amazing study of human nature. I was mesmerized by this and how this character dealt with his life living on an island where no one else was around and nobody knew he was there, and he was on his own to make his life work. And as he figured out how to create fire, how to spear fish so that he had sustenance, how to find water on this very tiny island, and do all the things that were required for life, in the midst of all that, he had to have a relationship with something. He had to relate to something. So he picked the only thing that he had. It was a volleyball that was on I think it was a UPS plane that went down with him. And that washed ashore on this little island. So he found a way to dye a face on it, and he somehow cut the top off and stuck stuff from palm trees in it so that it looked like it had hair. You can't see the face, but there it is right next to him. And of course, being the ball that it was, made by a company called Wilson, that became the name of his friend. And he had copious conversations with this ball to keep sane. It required that. So we have to do that. We have to, in our lives, have something going on with someone else so that we can have what we need to sustain our life. It's essential. Now, not everybody has what do you call them, soulmates. Not everybody does. Many people do. But even those that don't have an intimate primary relationship with another person has to have relationships. That's one of the things I think we accomplish as a spiritual community, is we have a diversity of relationships that helps keep us active and interested in life. It's important. It's essential for us to get where we want to go. So this idea of relating to others has to have within it some challenges. That's essential to the characteristics of doing this work, of relating to others. So the fact that you don't get along with everybody in your life shouldn't be a surprise. In fact, if you look at how we're organized as human beings, it's a little ridiculous to think that we could have a relationship with another person. We grow up separate from this other person that we find in life, in a different family, in a different school. We have different friends, we have different interests, and then suddenly we meet and we go, whoa, I'm in love with you. And that's lovely in the beginning, and then things start happening. Oh, no, 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 you can't do that. That just drives me crazy when you do that. Why do you do that? That doesn't work. I don't understand. And we have challenges. We don't like the way they think. We don't like some of the things they want to do. And how do we get along? Well, the only way I figured out that we could possibly get along with that is if the feeling we have for that person is greater than our need for them to be the way we want them to be. And when we do find the ability to have that sense that they are more important than what they do, we're able to create something that can be lasting and ongoing, at least for a while. I like the idea of soulmates, but I don't know if that's real, because I've heard lots of people say they had a soulmate and then suddenly they weren't with that person anymore. And some of them will go, well, they're still my soulmate, I just can't stand living with them. So what does that mean? How does that work? I don't really understand. What I do know is that as we do this, that there is great value in being in a relationship with someone that we are not the same as. We're different than them, and that makes life interesting and meaningful. It causes us to grow and expand in consciousness. If we were with someone that was just like us, that would never work. And if you'll notice, some of the people that we are most in conflict in our lives are the people that grew up in the same house that we did, or the parents that were there when we grew up. It's pretty universal that we have issues with those people. So, and it's a very good rule that we can't have long-term intimate relationships with them, because there would be way more murders in the world. So there's dealing with a friend named Wilson. This illusion of relationships is still an important element within us. We say that there are only 4 things that we do in our lives, that we deal with our health, we deal with our money, our wealth, we deal with other people, which is relationships, I guess, and we deal with how we express ourselves into the world. So it's one of the 4 pillars of life. It can't be considered small and unimportant. It is highly meaningful, and it's how we are to live, is in relationships, to relate to other people. It's essential to how we live. So, I want to talk about this way of relating. That's kind of a recent picture. And I just wanted you to be with us in that sense for just a moment. Barbara and I will have been married 31 years in October. Yeah. So I think I'm finally to a place where I can speak with a little bit of authority on this. And we've been through some pretty interesting things, not the least of which has been health issues for both of us over the last year. I was remembering how Barbara was so there for me when I had my back issues, how she would come home and feed me and take care of whatever my needs were, and then she'd race back over here to take care of the center's business. And then she'd come right home and she'd take care of me. And when I say she fed me, she literally put food on a utensil and put it in my mouth because I couldn't do it. She was there through my surgery, through my recovery. It was quite amazing. It'll be 1 year, July 1st, that we did that. And what was going on with all of that was my preparation to be there for her. And I don't want to lie to you that it's been easy. It hasn't. I think actually taking care of her at home was much easier, has been much easier than doing her job over here. But I have a great announcement for you. Barbara now is coming 1 day a week and handling a lot of the bookkeeping so that I can return to sanity. So here's what I want to share with you. I've got, my list of 10 things, and I'll go through them quickly because I don't want to keep you here all afternoon. I have an appointment at 2. So we're going to go through these 10 things that Barbara and I have figured out over the years that helps us be in a healthy, loving, ongoing relationship. Hit the right button. There you go. We don't question why we're together. We simply recognize that we're together, and we consistently choose that with each other. We don't presume that it'll always be that way. We make it so that it's that way right now. Because truly, all there is right now. So there's no need to go beyond that. It's simply to be here now and to give your all to what you're doing. And what we're doing is coexisting and communicating and supporting one another. And trust me, she supports me every bit or more than I support her. And that's what makes that work. If we disagree, we act on it immediately by listening to one another. If we have a difference of opinion on something, if we think something should be the other way, it is not to try to push down the other one's throat our way of wanting to do something. It's about listening to the rationale of the other person so that we can understand it. It may not change our position, but how do we know until we listen, until we understand that? So listening is a key ingredient in any successful one-on-one connection between human beings. We don't keep score on who did what, meaning that there's never, well, I did that for you. You don't want to do that for me? That's irrelevant. I do what I choose to do for her, and she does what she chooses to do for me. And we find a way of making that balance happen. And it always has, and I'm sure that it always will. We support one another's dreams. This brings immediately to mind our relationship in ministry. This center, whether she knew it or not, was her dream. And my dream was to support her in ministry. I had to be talked into being a minister with this center. And it happened pretty quickly, but still, that was not my context. My context was, I will support you because I know who you are as a minister, and I will wait until you're ready. Because her last ministry in Florida didn't end really that pretty. So we had to wait until she was ready to do it. And when she was ready, we started this center in our living room in 1995. And I was there to support her. At least that's what I thought initially. And she was there to support me when I got this notion that our spiritual movement that had split the year that she and I were born in 1953, she supported my dream of bringing it back together as one organization. That was not easy for her. She had to work extra hard to cover for me while I was gone. And she was always there for me. And she never once made me wrong for wanting to do that work. So we've always supported one another's dreams, no matter what. We are not driven by conditions. I do not love her less because she has some physical challenges. If anything, I love her more because who she has shown herself to be through this has been dazzling. It's been inspiring to the depths of my being. She doesn't complain. She doesn't demand. She doesn't get frustrated. Does she have some fears? She's living a human life. Of course she does. But she has been on top of this since day one. You see her walk around here with her cane now. It's been just a few days over 6 months since she had the stroke. And she couldn't move anything on her right side when she had the stroke. And she's doing her work. And she's improving consistently and will continue to improve. And because of that, she has people like Kate Wagner and others who surround her and support her and find ways to help her on her path. And it's really amazing to watch. If we don't understand something, we ask for more information. And this happens. You know, before the conflict comes, she'll say she wants to do something, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And I'll say, well, tell me why. Tell me what this is about. And she will. And she'll hit something in there somewhere, and my heart will just pop open. I'll say, well, of course, I'm with you. We'll make it happen, whatever it is. And she does the same with me. She could have easily said, I'm not comfortable with you going off for weeks, maybe even months at a time to support people other than this center. She never once said that. She was always there for me. And she didn't even ask me why I was going off to do that. She just knew that I was intent on making that happen. And she supported me entirely through that entire thing. We long ago stopped forgiving each other. The best way for me to explain how that works comes from that old movie of, God, I don't remember, 1970s called Love Story. Remember that phrase? Love means never having to say you're sorry. Love also means never having to say I forgive you. They go hand in hand. So we don't need to. Whatever happens, happens. And we let it be okay. There is no place to be sorry. There is no place to forgive. We just love. We honor our agreements. Now, I don't want to say I'm absolutely good at honoring agreements, but I do my best, and she always does her best. And that means most of the time, whatever we say we're going to do, we do. And when we don't get done the thing that we said that we would do, at least not in the timely manner that we would have liked, there's no sorries and there's no forgiveness. So it works out really well. Yeah, boy, do we do this. To me, the words I love you mean I'm grateful for you. There's no difference to me. So we say I love you all day long. Incessantly we say it. And we mean it. We say it when we first wake up. We say it last thing before we close our eyes at night. Being grateful is the essence of a relationship. And if you're grateful, as you know, if you're metaphysicians, you know that what you're grateful for continues to expand in your life. So my love for this woman continues to expand in every way in my life. And the last one, we remember who we are, and this may be the most important thing that we know and that we do. Because we are the presence of the divine, that thing we preach here, the thing we know here. We are God incarnate on planet Earth, and we see each other that way. So when we don't understand, we ask, but the truth remains, no matter what, we are here for one another as the divine presence, knowing itself, which is what's going on. The reason we have lives and bodies and we do this thing is so God can know itself. And what better way to know God than to look into the eyes of another and see God? Dr. Melissa Felipe, who is a musician in our movement, became a minister, wrote a song years ago, little chant actually. And I think it's up here. No, it's not. So let me just say it, and if we get to the words later, you won't need to see them up there. I'll just pass them. Dr. Melissa wrote this chant called There's Only One of Us. And it goes like this. There's only one of us. In your eyes, it's me I see. There is only one of us. You are my reflection. There's only one. And when we remember that, it reminds us of who we are, and it reminds us of who they are. And I want to invite you in your life to find someone as regular as you can and look into their eyes. It'll feel uncomfortable at first, but stay with it for a minute or two and just look and see if you don't get the God that's right there. And when you do, what you're getting is that that's the God in you. So let me share this idea of mirroring, which is what that's about. I got a quote for you. This is from Simon Peter Fuller, who wrote Holistic World Vision. What angers us in another person is more often than not an unhealed aspect of ourselves. If we had already resolved that particular issue, we would not be irritated by its reflection back to us. Conversely to that thought, whatever pleases us in another person is a reflection of things that we hold dear within us, things that are working within us, things that we aspire to within us. So find people to be in your space, in your company, who inspire you, who touch your heart. They're reflecting you. And when you find somebody, I'm not telling you to go out and look for someone who's going to irritate you, but when that happens, and it will, and it does, from your primary relationship to the people in traffic and the grocery store, when they cross your path, don't look at them and make them wrong. Look here. Look here. It's you that's looking for healing. That's why you're irritated. So mirroring who we are is happening with everyone that we see, everyone that we interact with. It's important and it's valuable. Krishnamurti said relationship is surely the mirror in which you discover yourself. The only way that happens, though, is if you're willing to do the work of recognizing they're not bad, they're not wrong, they're not the problem. What's happening is right here. You're not bad, you're not wrong, and you're not a problem unless you want to be. What you are is expanding your awareness of yourself with every step that you take and with every person that you meet. You and I are seeking to find ourselves. So I invite you, find yourself and know the truth. And I'm jumping a little fast there. We'll stay with Krishnamurti. So let's close this with a treatment real quick. Recognizing the presence and the power of the One, we find it in ourselves. We find it in one another. We know that that is the truth of all life. That divine presence, that creative force, dwells at every point in every way. So today we celebrate that by knowing that those that we love and those that love us bring us the bounty of good in our lives. And those that look differently, that cause us to possibly be irritated, are calling us to heal and to know the truth of ourselves. So I claim a healing. I claim a healing within me and in all who join me in this knowing that life is good, that life is rich, and that when it looks some other way, it's just calling us to remember who we are. And we remember. And God is good. And all is well. And so it is. Yeah. Thank you.